Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Miftahul Jannah from class C, English Education in semester 5. I will explain some of my mid-semester assignment with English for specific purposes lecturers Adisma SPD MPD. Number 1. The origins of ASP. As with most development in human activity, ASP was not a planned and coherent movement, but rather a phenomenon that grew out of a number of converging trends. These trends have operated in a variety of ways around the world, but we can identify three main reasons common to the emergence of all ASP. Number 1. The demands of a brave new world. The end of the Second World War heralded an age of enormous and unprecedented expansion in scientific, technical, and economic activity on an international scale. This expansion created a world unified and dominated by two forces, technology and commerce, which in their relentless progression generated a demand for an international language for various reasons, most notably the economic power of the United States in the post-war world. This role fell to English. Number 2. A revolution in linguistics. At the same time as the demand was growing for English courses tailored to specific needs, influential new ideas began to emerge in the study of language. Traditionally, the aim of linguistics had been to describe the rules of English usage, that is, the grammar. These ideas married up naturally with development of English courses for specific groups of learners. The idea was simple: if language varies from one situation of use to another, it should be possible to determine the features of specific situation and then make these features the basis of the learning course. Number 3. Focus on the learner. New development in educational psychology also contribute to the rise of ASP by emphasizing the central importance of the learning and their attitude to learning. The growth of ASP then was brought about by a combination of three important factors: the expansion of demand for English to suit particular needs, and development in the fields of linguistics and educational psychology. All three factors meant to point toward the need for increased specialization in language learning. Number 2. The development of ASP. From its early beginnings the ASP has undergone three main phases of development. It is now in a fourth phase with a fifth phase starting to emerge. We shall describe each of the five phases in greater detail in later chapters, but it will provide as useful perspective to give a brief summary. Here it shall be pointed out first of all that ASP is not a monolithic universal phenomenon. ASP has developed at different speeds in different countries. An example of all the approaches we shall describe can be found operating somewhere in the world at the present time. Our summary must therefore be very general in its focus. Number 1. The concept of a special language register analysis. Number 2. Beyond the sentence theoretical or discourse analysis. Number 3. Target situation analysis. Number 4. Skill and strategy. Number 5. A learning-centered approach. Number 4. Language description. Number 1. Classical or traditional grammar. Choose the space of word will change according to whether a subject and object indirectly and beyond. Language description. Any ASP course make use of implicit or implicit ideas about the nature of language. These ideas are drawn from the various language descriptions that have been developed by succeeding schools of thought in linguistics. We now have a number of ways of describing language available to use. It is therefore important to understand the main feature of each of these descriptions in order to consider how they can be used most appropriately in ASP courses. Not all the development in linguistics have had pedagogic application. Of course, in this chapter we shall give a brief outline of the various ideas about language that have influenced ASP in some way. We can identify 6 main stages of development. Number 1. Classical or traditional grammar. Number 2. Structural linguistics. Number 3. Transformational generative TG grammar. Number 4. Language variation and register analysis. Number 5. Functional national grammar. Discourse rhetorical analysis. Number 5. Theories of learning. The starting point for our language teaching should be an understanding of how people learn, but it is too often the case that learning factors are the last to be considered. ASP has been particularly guilty in this regard, as we saw in the previous chapter. The overwhelming weight of emphasis in ASP research and material has been on language analysis. Learning factors, if considered at all, are incorporated only after the language base has been analyzed and systematized. We have in effect been more concerned with arriving that with the journey. Number 1. Behaviorism learning as habit formation. Number 2. Mentalism thinking as rule governed activity. Number 3. Cognitive code learning as thinking band. Number 4. The affective factors learning as emotional bands. Number 5. Learning and education. Number 6. A model for learning. Number 6. Need analysis. What distinguishes ASP from general English is not the existence of a need as such, but rather an awareness of the need. If learners, sponsor, and teacher know why the learners need English, that awareness will have an influence on what will be acceptable as reasonable content in the language course, and on the positive side, what potential content in the language course, and on the positive side, what potential can be exploited. Just although it might appear on the surface that the SSP course is characterized by its content, science, medicine, commerce, tourism, and etc. This is in fact only a secondary consequence of the primary matter of being able to readily specify why the learner needs English. But briefly, it is not so much the nature of the need which distinguishes the SP from the general course, but rather the awareness of a need. Number 3. A learning needs. To understand what is meant by learning needs, let us look a little more closely at what happens in the analysis of target situation need. In looking at the target situation, the SP course designer is asking the question, what does the expert communicator need to know in order to function effectively in this situation? This information may be recorded in terms of language item, skill, strategy, subject knowledge, and etc. Number 4. Analyzing learning needs. Number 7. A process to course design. Course design is the process by which the raw data about a learning needs is interpreted in order to produce an integrated series of teaching learning experiences. Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.